Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to have all of you here today for our Forum Speaker Series luncheon. Today we have our Oregon State Chief Economist, Carl Riccadonna, as our keynote presenter. And just a wonderful head of table and some great individuals that are going to be sharing some information today. It's very much a treat. Usually I get to introduce you to your president, Ted Ferry. He is in warmer climates, enjoying a little bit of deserved downtime this week. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce you to your president-elect, Angela Williams with Huggins Insurance.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for that wonderful introduction. Ted Ferry is our current chamber president, and I miss Ted. Do you all miss Ted? Yeah. So how do I channel Ted? Well, the best I could do was to dress.
And the Nikes.
I'm not wearing Jordans, but they are Nikes, so there's that. So I'm either representing Ted Ferry with State Farm Insurance, or I'm a Target employee. I don't know which, but nonetheless, here I am. I know. Here you go. Welcome. We want to thank everyone for being here today. Do we have any new members out here today? Yes. Can you stand if you're a brand new member? We'd love to just say thanks for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a chamber member. It's going to be awesome. How about any first-time event attendees, luncheon attendees? Oh, please stand. Please stand. Thank you so much for being here. This is going to be an awesome treat. Carl has promised me some riveting information. You have, Carl, you said. We want to thank our Forum Series presenting sponsor, Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions. And now we are going to stand for the national anthem. Anna Sponable. So a lot of you don't know, I've known Anna Sponable since she was a wee little thing. And I was super pleased to see her name up here. So, Anna, lead us, girl.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled yet wave o'er the light of day and the home of the brave.
Please stay standing. We're going to pray really quick. Thank you so much. Let's pray. We take this moment to pray and reflect, each in our unique way, on our lives and on this moment. We are thankful for the meal before us, for those that made this event possible. We are thankful for our elected officials and the countless leaders in this room. Help us all to have a heart of a servant. We are grateful for this day, for its blessings, its opportunities, and even for its challenges and trials. Give all of us wisdom, strength, and guidance to take on each and every day with hearts and actions of love, joy, and kindness to everyone. Thank you. You may be seated. Oh, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. We are very, very, I know. Don't you love it? I know, I love it. So, I know. Anna Sponable is with Corbin University. And again, I have known her since she was a wee little thing. So I'm super excited to see her here. Just a little bit about Anna right now. She is a junior at Corbin University, majoring in Christian leadership. Woo woo to Corbin, whoever said that. She is part of Corbin's choral program under the direction of John Wack. Any relation to Sue Wack? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Whack attack. Thank you, John. Anna is from Kaiser, and she is currently an intern at the Rec, and after graduating Corbin, she hopes to work with nonprofits in Salem. If you're a nonprofit, you should probably get her number now, because Anna is a fantastic young woman. Thanks, Anna, for lending us your vocal skills today. And we are now going to watch a quick video for our friends at Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions.
Do the right thing is our first value, and it's the most core to what we are as a business and what we do. We believe in long-term relationships. Doing things the right way is the only way we can do them. We've been in the community for 115 years, so everything we do starts with that value of do the right thing. We're going to make sure we do right by the client every single time.
Excellence is found in its pursuit. It's about getting a little bit better every day, overcoming challenges, setting high standards. Excellence is a habit. It's not a finish line.
I love working with my clients and strategizing with them to help them with their employee benefit plans. But coming back to the office and working as a team with my coworkers and those account managers is integral to what I do.
If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with the team. When you think about your business and your company and looking out into the future, you want to be partnered up with companies that are going to be there for you. Companies like Hagen Hamilton.
Hagen Hamilton is proud to sponsor the Forum Speaker Series, and we thank you for joining us. Enjoy the presentation.
At every Salem Chamber event, you will see our ambassadors, and they are usually wearing, Sue, you are wearing yours. Would you stand for a moment, Miss Sue Wack? She is wearing the lovely blue blazer. She is modeling that. We love it, we love it. But they're also wearing the blue vests. Zach, you are wearing the blue. Would you stand and model that? Yep, there we go, there we go. And so there we go. Love it. We just want to thank our ambassadors for the work that they do here at the Chamber. If you have any questions, you can always speak with Thomas, but you can also speak with any of our skilled ambassadors. They will also help you. You can't talk to Ted, unfortunately, right now. He is in Hawaii, but he will return. Then talk to him. I want to recognize all the past presidents in the room. Would you please stand if you are a Chamber past president? We've got Richard over here, Laura, Wendy, Kathy. TJ's up here. Thank you so much for your work. And I get the privilege of working with an awesome group of people that are our current Chamber board members. Would you stand? I see BJ, Zach. I see Diane, I see Daryl, Rich, Jim, Alan, Todd, I saw you back there. Thank you so much for all the work that you guys do. I am proud to stand beside you and do work here in the Salem community. Now I want to introduce our head table. To my left, this gentleman needs an introduction. This is TJ Sullivan, and he is an insurance agent with Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions. Larry Beckedahl is also to my left. He's a Senior Vice President, Strategy and Advanced Energy Delivery at PGE. He is today's monthly sponsor, so thank you so much for that. To my right is our keynote speaker today is Carl Riccadonna. And I did verify pronunciation of Carl's name, so I'm doing great. How am I doing, Carl? I'm doing great. He is the chief economist for the state of Oregon, and we're pleased to have him here with us today. To my left is Melissa Maurer, and she is with the People's Bank, but Melissa also serves on our Crystal Apples Awards Committee, so thank you, Melissa, for the work that you do. Thomas. We cannot forget him. He is to my right, and he is the CEO of the Salem Chamber. So thank you, head table, and welcome. We have some elected officials with us today. We have Salem Mayor Julie Hoy. Julie, where are you? Oh, there you are. Salem City Councilor Linda Nishioka. There she is right there, Linda. We have Monmouth City Councilor Christopher Lopez. Vanessa Nordyke. The lights are so bright, madam, I can't see you, but Vanessa Nordyke is here. She is Salem City Councilor. And we have Chemeketa Community College Board Member Neva Hutchinson. There's Neva. And if I forgot anyone, I do apologize, but I'm going to make Tom take all the blame. I'm now going to invite Tom onto the stage.
Okay. I'm going to get used to apparently a year of Thomas. Thank you, Angelica, for starting us out. Today, we are honored to recognize an individual that has a wonderful impact in this community. She is a force of goodness, brings positivity, and a desire to help the community, and touch everyone she touches, leaves feeling better about themselves. Often content to operate behind the scenes, this woman, yes, a woman, organizes large groups of people to attend many of the local fundraisers that allow our nonprofit entities to operate effectively in our region. Today's Spirit of Salem Award recipient can be found supporting local wineries. She can be found supporting your local farm stands. And certainly, as I aforementioned, all the many nonprofit events, you're almost certainly going to see her there. She is skilled in sales, leadership, and marketing with a strong business development background rooted in her business marketing degree from Southern Oregon University. But one particular organization is closest to her heart, and that is the Salem Angels. And that has been the center of her nonprofit volunteer efforts for quite some time. There are more than 500 children and youth navigating foster care in Marion and Polk counties today. Here's where Salem Angels step in. The system is complex. The solution is simple. When consistent adults show up, stability grows. When stability grows, outcomes in our community change. Dena Beyrouty has helped mobilize a community of volunteers, mentors, donors, and partners who choose to show up, creating consistent support and real belonging for children, youth, and families navigating foster care. From this role, Dena, along with her husband Jason, saw an opportunity to take on the role of supporting a young mom by taking on her toddler son. After successfully raising 2 children of their own, being empty nesters for the first time, the Beyroutis, in fact, decided to start a new business as well. At that moment, a young toddler entered their lives needing love, attention, care, and guidance. Planning vacations for 2 suddenly switched to changing diapers and starting over with an active young boy just coming off his mother's substance addictions, which were within him as well. Dena and Jason took on this role with pride and a resolute mindset. If you are at a local nonprofit event, you will likely find Dena there with her signature smile and inviting aura, Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our March Spirit of Salem Award recipient, Dena Beyrouty. Come over here real quick.
Okay.
And then you're going to say
Oh. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Dena. I love you. I love you. Beautiful. Thank you. Wow. Many of you are in this room that are at all the events that I go to, and I always get choked up when I talk about our little guy. He's changed our world. We're turning 55 this year, and this is not what I thought. I did not think I was going to be having a 2-year-old. He came into our life when we were 3 months old, and he has forever changed us. He is actually, if you don't know about Salem Angels, I've been on the board with them for going on 6 years, and it's just an organization that is kind of flying under the radar. We're kind of new, but it's really impacted our lives. This is our 5th child that we've walked this journey with. 2 of them, we do donuts with Dena on Sundays, and I just did that with my first little guys, and they're now 5 and 6. And I have to say, I live a very sheltered life. I don't know about fentanyl, and I don't know a lot about addiction, and my parents are married. I'm super close to my family, and some of these people just have a really hard journey, and so we just feel so lucky that we get to walk alongside these kids. 2 other kiddos that we took on was a sibling group of 7. They're now a senior and sophomore at Western. 3% of foster kids go to school, go to college, so I always call them my 3%ers. But I kind of followed their lead. We got to pick. We traveled the world through food, so I'd let them pick different ethnic restaurants that we could go to, and every month we would go to a different one. We took them on college visits. One of them said that was their best vacation ever, was going to Klamath Falls, Oregon to visit OIT, which, I mean, it was sweet, but it just goes to show you that there's a lot of kids in our community that just don't have the privileges that our kids have. So anyway, thank you for seeing me, Tom. I appreciate you guys.
On Friday, all of our head table and people who are going to be working on the event received my script, and I always say, shh, don't say who the winner is. And one of those people read the script and said, make sure to add into the script that her biggest job is taking care of her husband, who's just like a toddler. Jason, my main man Beyrouty, as TJ would call you, that came from TJ. It is a distinct honor to now introduce our representative from our monthly sponsor, PGE. PGE is deeply committed to serving customers with reliable and increasingly clean energy. With a focus on affordability, they are continuously innovating, streamlining, and reducing costs so they may deliver exceptional experiences for their customers while working to keep bills as low as possible for us as residents and business owners. Having served alongside former Salem Chamber President Wendy Valise, I can affirm how focused PGE remains on keeping the lights on for the Salem community. Today, I get to introduce to our membership Larry Beckadall. Mr. Beckadall is responsible for advancing PGE's strategy to build the grid of the future, one that is resilient, smart, and delivers a clean energy future. He oversees PGE's strategic systems architecture and system upgrades, which will serve as the foundation for the smart grid of the future. This includes initiatives related to system integration and operations, enabling distributed energy resources, energy storage, dispatchable standby generation, grid operations, transmission system performance and developments, market interfaces, new large loads, as well as innovation, rates and regulatory, and research and development. You, sir, are doing a lot of work. You look tired. Beckett joined PGE in 2014 as Vice President of Transmission and Distribution. He has 4 decades of leadership and experience in the energy industry. Before joining PGE, he was Senior Vice President of Transmission Services for the Bonneville Power Administration and held leadership positions for Clark Public Utilities, Pacificorp, and Montana Power Company. Following his comments, Mr. Beckett will introduce our keynote speaker today. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Beckett.
Wow. Thank you, Tom. Or should I call you Thomas?
There's a trend coming.
A trend coming, okay. And as I think of State Farm, you wanted, I don't know, Larry the light bulb. You got Larry the PGE or something. I'm not sure. But thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here today, and appreciate the comments. And a shout out to Dena. That's fantastic on the Angels and taking care of those that can't help themselves. So thank you. So from PGE, we truly appreciate the Chamber's participation, an important role it plays in supporting local businesses, strengthening the regional economy, and bringing leaders together for conversations like this. And I was informed here as I came in that it wasn't long ago that this crowd was probably about half the size it is today. And a big shout out to all of you from Salem that you're getting together. The economy is not an easy place right now, which I know we'll hear from our keynote speaker, but what I want to say is that coming together really makes a big difference. The Willamette Valley has long been an engine of Oregon's economy, from agriculture and food processing to manufacturing, healthcare, education, and many small businesses. That's what really makes Salem strong. I also want to recognize the many local leaders in the room today, business owners, community partners, and local elected officials. And again, a shout out to those local elected officials. They're not paid a whole lot, and they spend a lot of time to make our communities better. So thank you all for your time and dedication. Portland General, we do value those partnerships, and we work closely with local leaders and communities across the region to understand priorities, support economic growth, and help ensure the electric system continues to meet the needs of customers and businesses. At PGE, we think about our role in a similar way. Our responsibility is to provide safe, reliable, and affordable electricity to customers and communities we serve while continuing to support Oregon's economic growth and the state's energy transition. That means making long-term investments in the grid, strengthening reliability, and planning for the future energy needs of growing communities. Events like today's luncheon are valuable because they give us an opportunity to step back and look at the broader economic picture, understand where our economy is headed for, and what it will do to help businesses make decisions, communities to plan, and organizations like ours make thoughtful long-term investments. Which brings us to today's keynote speaker. I'm honored to introduce Oregon's Chief Economist, Carl Riccadonna. Chief Economist Riccadonna has spent much of his career working as a high-caliber Wall Street analyst, working in senior positions with Deutsche Bank, analyzing complex economic trends, at the chief U.S. economist for Bloomberg, and he was the chief U.S. economist for the Market Strategy and Economic Division of BNP Paribas. Today, he takes that insight into our state government, analyzing Oregon's economic trends, their impact on tax revenue, and preparing quarterly forecasts for our legislative assembly, projecting the direction of our state's finances. Of particular importance, his May forecast in odd-numbered years are relied upon by legislators for drafting the biennium budget. These projections also frame the budget's criteria, whether to issue a kicker tax rebate should the income tax revenue exceed 2% or more than anticipated. Oregon is fortunate to have someone with his experience, and we're so excited to have him with us today. Please welcome to the stage Chief Economist Carl Riccadonna. Thank you, Carl.
Well, those are some tough acts to follow. It's been very uplifting so far in the conversation, and now the Economist is on to share the dismal news. But hopefully, I can continue the theme of being uplifting. Angela, I'll just say, it's lucky that he didn't work for Geico, because you'd be in the lizard suit instead of a State Farm red shirt. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But anyhow. Before I start my prepared remarks, I just want to say something very unique to this room. And I'll start by saying this is not normal. I have spent 25 years forecasting national and state economies. I've traveled all over, and nowhere have I seen such a vibrant Chamber of Commerce community as I have here in Oregon. This is not happening on this scale on the East Coast or elsewhere. I've traveled all over. There's lots of chambers around the country, of course, but I have not seen such a vibrant chamber community since arriving here in Oregon, and that goes for here in Salem, but around the state as well. And I find it so refreshing and encouraging to see people all across the political spectrum understanding that, as Bill Clinton said back in 1992, it's the economy, stupid, right? A vibrant economy, focus on solving economic problems, allows us to accomplish so many goals, whether it's raising the bottom line of a business or raising the revenue necessary to support various social programs and whatnot. So regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, we're all rooting for a stronger economy. Now, before I tell you a little bit more, not sure where I should, oh, there we go, okay. Oh, now we're going all over the place. Don't look. Okay. Before I go into the prepared remarks and tell you a little bit more about who I am, we're going to go back one more, I want to get to know you a little bit better as well. So we'll keep this simple and old-fashioned. By a show of hands, who thinks we are in recession at this moment, or we are heading to recession in the course of this year? Okay, few hands. We'll say a fifth of the hands went up. Who here, now don't think of the national economy, think about your own businesses. Who here is anticipating a stronger year in 2026 compared to 2025? A lot of hands. Okay. Last question. Who here is expecting to increase hiring this year? Okay, I'll say about half of the hands that just went up returned for hiring increases. So it's good to know your audience, and of course, typically when I speak to business groups, there is an inherent optimism in the room. And so before I begin, then I'll just tell you a little bit about who I am, and that was a great introduction, so we'll keep it very short. But I wear a lot of hats as the chief economist for the state. And so we can see on the slide here lots of the roles my office plays. So we are forecasting the national economy. We translate that into a state of Oregon forecast. Of course, the complexion, the industrial complexion or the economic complexion of Oregon is different than the national economy. So we distill that national view into a state economic view. And then we take what we know about demographics, what we know about tax rates and tax policy, and layer that onto that economic view. So the biggest hat I wear, which is the green box you see on the screen, is forecasting state revenue. And of course, that is setting the budget levels for all of the social programs and endeavors of the state of Oregon. So you can see lots of things go into that revenue forecast. And of course, if we are too conservative and revenues come in stronger, then that triggers your kicker. So most of you know me as the kicker guy. And so those of you who have filed your taxes this year already understand that there is a kicker rebate being applied for the 2025 tax year. In addition to that, we are forecasting transportation needs for the state, criminal justice, caseloads, demand for defense, public defenders. We're forecasting clean fuel demand in the state. So we're doing lots of different things. I'm not just a kicker guy. That's just the most high-profile thing that our office handles. And so with that, I'd like to jump into some of the key themes for the national economy and for the state economy as we're thinking about 2026. And so the first theme I want to touch on is a mid-cycle refresh. Maybe some of you remember the old Coca-Cola advertisement, the pause that refreshes. That's where I believe we are right now in the economic cycle. Economic cycles tend to not die of old age. They either are murdered by the Federal Reserve or they succumb to economic shocks. And we can talk about one of those economic shocks, energy prices, in just a moment. Where we are now, we have a lot of tailwinds that are supporting the economy, both state and nationally, in 2026. First of all, actually, rewind the tape. I forgot one other thing on this slide. My goal, right, my hat that I wear, happens to fall within the executive branch. However, the Office of Economic Analysis, of which I am the head, has a long-standing tradition of fierce political independence, nonpartisan analysis. And so my goal is, at the end of the discussion today, you're still scratching your head saying, I'm not sure if he's a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, where he falls on the political spectrum. And so the role of the chief economist and the Office of Economic Analysis is very much the role of referee or umpire, often who no one likes at the end of the game. And our job is to call balls and strikes, sometimes against the home team, sometimes against the away team. And so I hope that you'll see that during the course of today's discussion. And so what could be more political than talking about tax policy? And part of this mid-cycle refresh is due to the tax cuts that were signed into law last July 4th. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act was a significant stimulus for the economy. Now, by no means should we think those tax cuts pay for themselves. We are borrowing to pay for those tax cuts. And those tax cuts boost the economy over the course of the next decade by about $3.4 trillion. So it's kind of like Angela gives me her credit card and says, go out and have a fun time in Salem tonight. Certainly I'll have more fun if I'm spending on Angela's dime than if I have to spend out of my own pocket. And so those tax cuts very much are stimulating the economy. They're probably adding a full percentage point to growth this year. But it is coming at the cost of a significant increase in the debt that will be issued to pay for it. Tax cuts, a tailwind on the economy. Tailwind number two is the interest rate reductions from the Federal Reserve. Coming out of the pandemic, we had very high inflation. The Federal Reserve was raising interest rates to slow down the economy and try to rein in that inflation. We can't say mission accomplished because we're still running hot, but we've come down considerably. And so as inflation pressures and price pressures have come down, the Federal Reserve has lowered interest rates by about 2 full percentage points. So that's the cost of borrowing for a business loan, an automobile, mortgage rates kind of tied into some other interest rates. We'll talk about that later on. But if the cost of borrowing is coming down, that impacts the economy with a long and variable lag, usually about 1 to 1.5 years. And so we are also bearing the fruit of those interest rate reductions from the Federal Reserve, which of course are factoring into valuations in the stock market, financial markets more broadly, et cetera, et cetera. So two key tailwinds. And the third tailwind, which I say tariff stability here, and you might be saying, well, wait a minute, I don't think we have tariff stability, they're still in place. But we have a lot more certainty around the tariff environment now than we did last year at this time, where there were rampant rumors of what the administration was potentially going to do with tariffs, and there was tremendous uncertainty. And I don't need to tell a group of business people the paralyzing impact of uncertainty on the business climate. You may love tariffs, you may hate tariffs, but the uncertainty around what that tariff policy will be dramatically impedes hiring, investment, supply chain decisions. And so the tariffs are here. Even though there was a Supreme Court ruling, they've kind of reverse engineered new tariffs to kind of get to the same endpoint in terms of effective tariff rates. And so there's a lot more stability now than there was a year ago. I'll show you a little bit about that later on. But the reduction of uncertainty is an economic stimulus in and of itself. And so all of these things are supporting the economy. Risk factor number 2 is artificial intelligence. And this plays into our economic outlook in 2 ways. One is through the lofty valuations of what I'll call the hyperscalers, so the tech firms, the AI firms, semiconductor firms, the Magnificent Seven in the stock market, if you're familiar with that term. This is really boosting financial markets, which plays into capital gains taxes, which is a big part of my revenue forecasting role to kind of understand those trends. So AI, on one hand, impacts through financial markets, but also as a jobs disruptor. And we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. We're in this weird environment now, and it was reflected in the survey we did at the onset, where lots of folks said the economy will be stronger this year than last year. And when I said who's hiring, most of those hands went down. And so we're in this weird paradigm where the economy is growing great. That should mean that hiring and labor market conditions follow suit, but that's not been the reality in this cycle. And there's a big question mark. Is that AI impacting us right now? Are the robots coming for our jobs, to dramatize it? Or is something else at play? And we can see these kind of cyclical variations in this relationship between growth and hiring throughout economic cycles. My office's view, and my view, is more that this is a rebalancing of labor conditions post-pandemic. Lots of companies overhired during the reopening, and now they're seeing a slower economy, and so they're right-sizing their labor force. And if you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you go out and make a press statement saying, oops, I made a mistake, I hired too many people during the pandemic, bad judgment on my part, that doesn't get treated so well by investors. If that same CEO comes out and says, oh, well, we're investing in the future and spending lots of money on AI and efficiency gains and productivity gains and whatnot, and so we're reducing our labor force as a result, the investor class is much less punishing of that outcome. And so there's lots of CEOs who made the mistake during the pandemic, but are blaming it on AI right now to avoid the punishment. And so this is creating some perception that AI really here and now is disrupting the labor force, and it doesn't seem to be playing out in the data in that way. Commercial real estate re-rating. This is happening across the country. We saw it just north of us in Portland with the sale of Big Pink. A decade ago, it sold for something like $370 million. 10 years later, it sold for about $45 million. This is causing a huge re-rating of the tax base as every other corporate income property taxpayer marches down to City Hall and says, well, if they got re-rated, I want re-rated. And we're seeing it in Portland. We're seeing it in the state more broadly. We're seeing it in Chicago, in Boston. Right? This is dramatically changing who is paying the bills at the state and local level. And this is a trend that I fear we have not seen the end of, especially with a lot of remote work and that flexibility we all were introduced to during the pandemic, not going away anytime soon. I will say Oregon and Colorado are the 2 highest states for remote work in the country. And so this is creating a problem with foot traffic in urban centers, et cetera, et cetera. Fourth is fiscal dominance. That's an economist term. That means high debt levels. And so we already talked about the cost of those tax cuts last summer. Certainly, all of the engagement in the Middle East at the moment is going to have a hefty price tag as well. And we are in an environment where U.S. debt to GDP or debt to income ratios are continually moving higher. And if we look at the single largest line item for spending in the U.S. federal budget, it is interest on the debt. That is money that is taken away from other, either a tax cut or other potential spending programs. As that goes higher and higher, it literally drains the blood out of the economy. And so this is a factor. I'm not saying that things blow up this year, but as those debt levels go higher and higher, it does slow down the potential growth rate for the economy. The last thing I will mention on this slide, I promise all the other slides will go a lot faster than this one, is geopolitics and energy. And certainly we're very focused on what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, and especially in the context of energy prices. Iran has been a pariah state, heavily sanctioned by the U.S. for many, many years. And so typically if there's a geopolitical disruption, we would look at trade flows and say, what does that mean for the economy? For the last available year, exports from Iran to the U.S. Totaled something like $1.5 million. It's nothing, right? That's the $1.5 million, all the exports from Iran into the U.S. It's nothing. So the trade, direct trade linkage is completely negligible with Iran. And so where we need to focus is on energy prices. We've seen a big rise in gasoline prices and by the moment, and oil prices over the course of the last week, more or less. And so overnight, oil prices were up to $120 per barrel. They came down a little bit as I left my desk to come over here for this lunch event. Oil prices were down to about $95 per barrel. That's up from about low $60 per barrel levels earlier this year. This directly translates into gasoline prices, as all of you know who have filled up over the last week. And as we're thinking about this from the economic outlook, right, our big question in my mind is, are we headed to recession? And I did not put my hand up when I said who thinks we're headed to recession in the next year. But what would push me to that sort of conclusion is oil prices approaching $150 per barrel, which would mean gasoline of about $5.50 per gallon. Currently, we're about $3.80 per gallon, $3.50 to $3.80 per gallon on the national average. And so we are well below the level which would tip us into recession. We'll talk about the arithmetic of how we get to that in just a moment, but energy prices are a very real risk. I mentioned two things can cause the economic cycle to end. The Federal Reserve murders it by keeping interest rates too high. That's not happening because the Fed has been in a cutting cycle and is likely to continue lowering interest rates over the course of this year. The other thing is shocks, like energy shocks. We saw that in the 1970s. We saw that before the 1990 recession when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And that is a risk at the moment, but certainly not a baseline. So what you're looking at on the screen here is the evolution of forecasts for the U.S. economy over the course of the last year. And so we went from tariff scares and geopolitics and all of this, and we're seeing really very stable activity. So people were very variable in terms of what they thought the consequences would be for the economy in 2025, but all through the tariff drama and other developments of last year, tax code changes and whatnot, the outlook for 2026 was really rock solid and just holding in at this kind of 2%-ish type of levels. I'll talk about why that matters. What you see here is basically about 60 years of economic history for the U.S. And back when you took macro in high school or college, the instructor, when he was talking about economic policy, he or she was talking about economic policy, probably talked about economic stewardship as being like driving an aircraft carrier or a super tanker, right? It takes a long time to accelerate, to brake, to make turns and whatnot. And that's true. There's a long and variable impact for economic policy decisions, whether it's tax rates or interest rates, to impact the economy. However, a supertanker can bob up and down in the ocean at 0 knots or 0 miles per hour and do just fine, as many supertankers are doing in the Middle East at the moment, just parked. The reality for the economy is more like a jumbo jet. And we all know a jumbo jet cannot go 0 miles per hour unless it's sitting on the tarmac, right? So the economy is like a jet where if it slows down too much, it begins to destabilize and lose altitude. And what we can see in this chart here, that stall speed for the economy is not 0. So we don't have to go to 0 growth to go into a recession. In fact, that red line is right at the 1% mark, which means historically, if we slow to 1%, it's probably too late and we're heading into a recession. So you'll get to 0, you'll get to negative, but it's all it takes to get there is slowing down to 1%. Well, it's encouraging that forecasters are looking for about 2% this year. But when I threw out those oil price numbers and that gas price number, $150 per barrel, $5.50 per gallon, we get to that by taking these forecasts and modeling what it takes to get that 2%-ish number down to 1%. So a rise in energy prices is very much like a tax increase, right? It's less take-home pay at the end of the month. And energy consumption is not very elastic. You have to keep your thermostat pretty much at 68 degrees, right? You have to drive to work. There's not a lot of public transportation options or ability to substitute. And so you have pretty much a fixed demand, which means if the price goes up, you're spending more, you have to pull back on other things. So I got to those numbers I mentioned to you by basically shocking the economic model and continually putting higher and higher energy prices in until that 2% number became 1%. And we know if we get to 1%, we're basically going into recession. So that's a little bit of background on how we got to that. And that's also something that we used to model the impact of tariffs last year. So economists typically are not an optimistic lot. And of course, when the tariffs rolled out on Liberation Day last year, which was April 2nd, a lot of forecasters said, that's it, this means recession. Me calling for recession in my role has pretty big consequences because it means I have to march into the governor's office and the legislative leadership and say, we're changing our forecast. You have $2.5 billion less to spend in the state general fund. So there are huge consequences for education, for social programs, et cetera, by making that call. If I see it, I will make that call. But if I make that call unnecessarily, then we have a big pullback in state resources that doesn't actually come to fruition. So there are big consequences to me getting my forecast wrong. And so when those tariffs came out last year, right, economists are always looking to recent past precedent. So for example, if a hurricane is about to make landfall in the Gulf of Mexico, economists will pull out their history books and say, when is the last time we saw a hurricane of that magnitude hitting that particular part of the Gulf Coast? What did it do for tourism, for offshore energy production, et cetera, right? We're trying to look for historical parallels. What I'm showing you here, you probably didn't think when you were showing up to lunch today that you'd be getting 250 years of tariff history for the United States. But what we can see here is the effective tariff rate in the US from 1790 to present. So I'll spare you a lot of history, but tariffs were originally the primary source of income for the federal government up until World War I, when we shifted towards income taxes, corporate and personal income taxes, right? If we look at where we are, so that dotted line is kind of where we are now, and trace that back, we have to go back to the 1930s to see tariff rates at this level. So then economists start panicking and they say, well, 1930s, that's the grapes of wrath. That's the Great Depression. That's thousands of bank failures, right? That was it's the middle of the Great Depression, right? Taking that parallel, I believe, is a big mistake. And of course, the economy is so different from where we were in the 1930s. But if we look from about 1930 to present, we can see that for the course of really 2 generations, we've seen tariffs only move, 3 generations, we've only seen tariffs move in one direction, lower. So if you've been in a world of globalization and trade liberalization, and you've only seen the trend moving in one direction, it's very difficult to understand how the economy will respond when that changes, and we can see a big spike higher in tariff rates. So a lot of economists panicked and said, well, we don't, this is uncharted territory, we're talking 1930s, a lot of recession calls last year. And instead, we took that same approach that I described applying to energy prices and applied that to tariffs as well. And so a tariff is a tax increase, right? So we don't have good examples of tariffs moving up that we can model using modern history. But we have plenty of opportunities where we can look at tax changes and understand how that impacted the economy. So on the left-hand side of the chart here, you see tariff uncertainty. So I mentioned uncertainty has come down. We can see where we were on April 2nd of last year, literally the high point in that chart, and where things have settled. And then the red box is kind of where we were in 2018 during the prior trade war. So much more uncertainty in 2025 compared to the prior tariff period. And we have come down considerably, even despite the recent Supreme Court rulings and whatnot. Now, when I say tariffs are a tax, I start to see some wrinkled eyebrows and furrowed brows in the audience. On the right-hand side of the screen, you are looking at dollars in the door at the U.S. Treasury from tariffs. So there's nothing political about what's happening here. This is simply tariff revenue rolling in the door at the U.S. Treasury. And we can see there's a very big change happening in the middle of 2025, which is dramatically increasing revenue. Now, I mentioned the tax cuts don't pay for themselves, and I said the price tag was about $3.4 trillion. Given where tariffs are, we're raising about $2.7 trillion over a 10-year horizon. So the tariffs are helping to pay for those tax cuts, but they certainly don't entirely cover the bill. They cover about 80% of the price tag of that of those tax cuts, which means if we get rid of tariffs completely, now we have a much larger unfunded liability for those tax cuts with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, also known as H.R. 1, that came across last summer. So the important thing about tariffs, I said tariffs are a tax, and often we hear the lazy narrative that tariffs are a tax paid for by consumers. And that can be true, and it also cannot be true at various points in history. And so if we look back to 2018, the tariff costs were not paid for by consumers. We did not see a spike in inflation due to the tariffs. Excuse me. Instead, we saw tariff costs paid for across the supply chain. So middlemen reduced their margins. The exporters to the U.S. Reduced their prices. And so the tariffs were not paid for by consumers in 2018. They were paid further up the supply chain. And a great example of this are the Costcos and Walmarts and Targets of the world, who in 2018 said, okay, well, there's 25% tariffs on China. I'm not changing the price of my $100 pair of sneakers on the store shelf here, so you have to figure it out up the supply chain. And so we saw China devalue its currency. We saw margin compression in Chinese industry. And so China, in that instance, really was paying for the tariffs, and consumers were not paying in 2018. This time around, the shock from tariffs is so much bigger that it can't all be distributed up the supply chain, and we are seeing some pass-through into U.S. consumer prices as well. I'll spare you the math on this slide. It's basically going through how we take that effective tariff rate you see in this 200-year history and apply it to imports. But the moral of the story is when we did that sort of tax analysis, it got us to a slowdown. It didn't get us below that 1% stall speed. And so that's why we largely avoided going into recession last year. As we're thinking about the consequences of what's happening now, and I keep using that R word, recession, I hope I'm not causing too much indigestion during a lunch discussion, but what you're looking at here is the performance of the U.S. stock market, the S&P 500. Now, I'll be the first one to say the stock market is not the economy, but it is a good economic bellwether. And at the onset of recession, the red shaded bars you see here, the stock market is typically deep into negative territory, right? And we can look at the last several recessions. We see -7, -9, -18, -6%, right? Right now, we are up about 17% in year-on-year terms. So year to date, sure, the stock market's been down a little bit, but it is still up in year-on-year terms. So the stock market, it's been down in the last several trading sessions, is nowhere near sending that recession signal, which is important because we're still below kind of the critical breaking points for energy prices. Now to translate a little bit more into what's happening here in Oregon, and I have a clock here, so I'm going to speed up the pace of some of the slides here. What you see on the slide here is Oregon economic output compared to the U.S. economy, and we can see Oregon has been underperforming the U.S. In the post-pandemic period. And there's a variety of reasons why this is the case, but we've had some real microeconomic stories here in the state with some large employers in semiconductors, in athletic apparel. You know the names, I won't name them. And we've seen leadership reshuffling in those businesses and whatnot. And I think that's a major contributor to the underperformance. And what we're seeing, if you squint and put some optimistic glasses on, a little bit of a reacceleration on the far right-hand side there. The last reported quarter, Oregon was ranked 20th nationally for growth. So it is starting to show some signs of a rebound. We care about this growth relationship because all this scatter plot you're looking at is just the relationship between growth and employment in the state. And we can see various growth scenarios and what the consequences are for job creation. So growth very much matters. What we see on the left-hand slide here is the unemployment rate in Oregon, rising more than the national unemployment rate. And that's no surprise. If the economy is growing slower than the national trend, then the unemployment rate is going to rise faster. That's the moral of the story there. Maybe not as bad as it seems, though, because if we look to the other side of the chart here, that's just the spread between Oregon and the U.S. unemployment rate. It's been a legacy, for reasons we don't fully understand, that Oregon unemployment has always run about 0.6 percentage points higher than the national rate. So it just tends to run high. And we can see where we are now is pretty much in line with the 50-year average. So I wouldn't say that something's going particularly wrong in Oregon, but rather we're kind of mean reverting in terms of labor dynamics. A few other ways of looking at is something going wrong here relative to the U.S. Business bankruptcies, pretty much tracking the national trend. And on the next slide, births and deaths of businesses, also pretty much following the national trend. So it doesn't seem that there's something glaring going wrong here, but rather kind of tracking with national trends. A little bit more data on the labor market. We can, well, it's lunch, so we can talk about spaghetti. On the left-hand side of the chart here is just filings for unemployment benefits. It's very seasonal. So we have layoffs of school bus drivers at the end of the school year or construction workers as the weather turns sour in the winter. So it's very hard to look at movements without overlaying prior years there. And so the different colors you see in that chart are different years. And what I'll tell you is the red line is 2025, and 2025 just doesn't look that different from other years. And so if you weren't paying attention to DOGE or any of the tariffs or any of those other national headlines, and you were only looking at that chart, you'd say 2025 was a year pretty much like other recent years for the state. And in fact, that's true when we look at state revenue and labor trends and whatnot. Here's the last jobs report in the state. And we can see it was a negative jobs report in December. But what's more important here is the composition of job creation in the state. And we can see that job creation is really most focused in service-oriented sectors, things like healthcare and education and whatnot. The goods-producing sector has been perennially weak in the state post-pandemic. So manufacturing, construction, et cetera. The next slide just shows that net job loss, which is unusual to see outside of a recession, but not the magnitude that we typically see during recessions. So So it does not look like we were in recession, and our expectation is that we will stay out of recession as long as energy prices are contained. Just to focus a little bit more on the regional dynamics in the labor market for Oregon, here we show employment relative to February of 2020. And so we can see that there has been net job creation in rural counties and in secondary metros. The Portland metro area is still in the hole relative to where it was on February of 2020. So the remote work story, some other stories there relating to policies and whatnot, but we can see where job creation has been. And good news for Salem, if we look at that secondary metro line, which is the dark blue line in that chart, we can break that down into all the secondary metros, and we can see that Bend and Salem are the job leaders among those secondary metros, well above where we were in February of 2020. This is hard to read intentionally, so just focus on the orange arrow there. And this is just showing how Oregon compares to the other 50 states in terms of job creation. So we're kind of middle of the pack or lower middle of the pack on job creation. And if you thought this chart was bad, wait till you see the next one, even harder to read. But again, don't read the fine print. We're looking at manufacturing, construction, and then private services, and just focus on where those orange arrows are. And you can see how poor labor conditions have been in the manufacturing and construction sector. Meanwhile, in the service sector, private service sector, we can see that job creation is in the upper quartile of job growth nationally. So that gives you some sense of the flavor of what's happening in the labor market. Here's the inflation story very quickly, so we don't need to focus so much on the colors of the bars. The total height of the bar is the inflation rate at any point in time. This is in the West region. It looks very similar if we look at national data. And we can see that post-pandemic spike in inflation pressures. The Fed combats that with high interest rates, and inflation comes down. But the Fed's objective is to get back to 2% inflation. We're now still running kind of 2.5% to 3%, so they have not fully solved that problem. And when you start cutting interest rates, you're pretty much giving up on fighting that problem. And so the Fed is instead more focused on labor market conditions than getting the last mile of the marathon back down to 2% inflation. I talked about interest rate cuts earlier. And I've also talked about fiscal dominance. So I would like to marry the two here, because if you look at the fine print of your mortgage terms, it's not the Fed funds rate, the rate set by the overnight interest rate set by the Federal Reserve, that determines your mortgage rate. Your mortgage rate is more tied to things like the 10-year Treasury yield, right? That's true for auto loans, true for mortgages, lots of other loans. And if we look at what's happening on this chart, typically, so the blue line is average, the orange line is what we've experienced in this economic cycle. And so ordinarily, as the Fed is lowering the overnight interest rate, we see other interest rates coming down with it: credit card rates, auto loans, mortgages, et cetera, including the 10-year Treasury yield. The orange line is showing you that even as the Fed has been cutting interest rates, other interest rates have moved higher. Now, that may seem unusual, but if we put together two things we've already discussed: one, inflation has not settled back down to 2%, and certainly energy prices and whatnot, threaten for inflation to potentially even move higher. So, who here in the room wants to collect 2% in a savings account when inflation's running at 3%? Yeah, I didn't think so, right? So the persistent inflation is causing investors to demand a higher rate of interest. Those investors who are buying treasury notes and bonds are demanding a higher interest rate. So persistent inflation pushes interest rates up. Also, borrowing needs. If I go to my local bank and look for a mortgage, they may be willing to give me one. I have stable employment, knock on wood. If I go to that same bank and say, I want to take out my 12th mortgage, right, the terms of that 12th mortgage is going to look very different because I don't have the ability to cover all of that debt. And we talked about the fiscal dominance and the high amount of money being devoted to interest payments. And so if I'm that client asking for the 12th mortgage, right, the bank is demanding a higher interest rate. So we have higher inflation, and thanks to H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, higher borrowing needs from the Treasury. And so we are seeing elevated interest rates, even though the Fed has been cutting. And so the Fed cutting does impact borrowing conditions for some businesses, but we're seeing this kind of persistent, elevated interest rate environment. I'm running out of time here, so we'll say here is interest rates on a mortgage compared to 10-year Treasury yields. We can see they track together. And here we can see home price trends kind of petering out because we have these persistent elevated inflation pressures. This is just quickly personal income taxes and corporate income taxes. We can see holding up in a way. So I can call my colleagues over at the Department of Revenue and find out what yesterday's tax collections looked like. And that is a very important economic bellwether because if we're going into a recession, we're going to see those tax payments cratering, and that has not been the case. The final point I want to leave you with, very quickly, here's a heat map of population growth in Oregon, so we can see kind of central Oregon is where the action is in terms of population growth. Demographics are very important for any economic system. And here we can see kind of historic demographic growth in Oregon versus what's projected going forward, right? That projected forward rate is about half of what it has been over the last 25 years, which means that we should not take for granted the kind of economic and business conditions we've all gotten used to over the last 25 years. That is not the status quo going forward. We are looking at a slower growing economy because we have slower growing population. And as we look a little deeper into that population, we can see that what I'll call the silver tsunami is hitting Oregon, where we have more seniors than school-age children. This matters as we think about how to allocate resources at the state and local level. Do we need more preschool or primary grade level classrooms or more services for an aging population, right? And so the last thing I'll leave you with here is what I call my growth limiting equation. So demographics are destiny. I didn't coin that phrase, but that's a mantra of economists. And so we've talked about all sorts of economic indicators today. Maybe I made your head spin, but as we think about the long-term prospects for an economy, it can be the Salem-Kaiser metro area, it can be the state of Oregon, it can be the US, it can be the Western Hemisphere. In any economic model, the restrictions on growth come down to two main factors. One is population growth, right? And it's easy to understand. If I have a state where the population, or a country where the population is growing 1% per year, it's easy to see that economic growth in that entity would be about 1% per year. The way I can do better is if I make my workforce or my population more productive. So I give them better infrastructure, more education, better tools like AI, for example, right? If I give better tools to my workforce, then I can boost their potential output. So the workforce is growing 1% per year, but I make my workers more productive, I can achieve economic growth better than 1% per year. And so what I'm showing in this chart here, the orange line is economic growth. And so we can see, we're going back to the 1960s here, we can see that the pace of growth in the national economy has consistently slowed over the last several decades, right? So part of the kind of political spirit for half of the country at the moment is this nostalgia for making the economy feel like it felt in some prior era and whatnot. And we can see that there's something to that because if we look at GDP growth, it's about half of what it was 50 years ago. Economic output, GDP, half of what it was 50 years ago. That is driven by two levers. So policymakers have two levers. One is population growth, and one is productivity. And so if we look at productivity in the economy, and here I'm comparing 1975 to 2025, productivity in 2025 is, it's getting late in lunch hour, we'll use whole numbers, is 2%. In 1975, it was 2%. So if AI was eating our lunch and the robots were coming for our jobs, we'd have a huge gain in economic output without the need to add additional workers. We would see a productivity explosion. That's not happening at the moment. Productivity now looks the same as it did 50 years ago. Now, maybe AI can change this and could be hugely disruptive. I'm not ruling that out. I'm just ruling that out right now. We could see a big change in productivity. If we don't see a change in productivity, then the only thing that can get our growth rate from the end of that orange line back up to a higher period is changing the population. It's not happening here in Oregon with the silver tsunami, and it's not happening nationally either. So we either need to somehow create a baby boom, or otherwise, if we don't create enough internally, we have to import those workers, right? So again, I'm being the umpire and being apolitical here, but the point is we have two levers to control what the economy looks like over the longer run, productivity and population. Neither is telling us that we're getting back to those faster growth rates. So I've gone over on my time. The hook is coming to take me off stage here.
You've been hooked.
I've been hooked. Do we have time for a few questions? No time for questions. Okay, so my contact information is available. Google me. You can find me. My office is always happy to have the outreach. In conclusion, I will just say economists are often guilty of operating in the ivory tower, right? We understand what should be happening in theory, and that's why I love traveling the state to meet with the business community, especially to come to these chamber events, because it's the opportunity for us to see what is happening what we think should be happening in theory is actually happening in reality. And so it's great to come to events like this and to hear the real feedback. And my office really values that feedback. Every time I do these speeches, I get lots of emails after the fact or outreach and whatnot. And we love to hear what is happening in your particular corner of Oregon and to see if that's matching what we should be anticipating. So thank you so much. And I will just say, keep up the good work, Chamber of Commerce in Oregon and here in Salem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl. We appreciate you being here today. I have some quick thank yous, and I'm going to go through them very fast. Thank you, Anna, for knocking it out of the park and singing that national anthem. You did a fantastic job. I'm super proud of you. Thank you to Allied Video Productions and the Salem Convention Center. You guys always do an amazing job, and we're just so blessed to be partners with you both. Thank you, Jason John, with Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions for serving as our Forum Speaker Series Luncheon presenting sponsor. PGE, Wendy's, right in front of me here. Thank you so much for you and your team for being this afternoon's monthly sponsor. At your tables, you're going to see a sheet of paper with a whole bunch of QR codes. That is provided to us by our illustrious Jackie Roche. She helps keep us all on track, helps keep events on our calendars. And so if you would take a quick peek at that and just see what events we have upcoming, we would love to have you there. On Monday, April 3rd, we have another Forum Speaker Series, and we are going to have, it's going to be pretty phenomenal. You will want to be here because we will sell out. Salem City Council wards 2, 4, 6, and 8. If you don't know who those candidates are, you will want to know who they are. This does affect our city, and so register at the Salem Chamber. Actually, not the Salem Chamber, salemchamber.org. April 13th. Oh, that's my daughter's birthday. Do you know that? We have our upcoming 75th annual First Citizen Awards Banquet. Who has their tickets already? Raise your hands if you have your tickets already. Excellent. I'm proud of you. That event will sell out. We are going to recognize First Citizen, Distinguished Service, Outstanding Young Professional, and for the first time, Outstanding Nonprofit Leadership. It is an amazing event, and that is presented by Mountain West Center for Community Excellence and Pioneer Trust Bank. Thank you so much. Again, that event will sell out. Ladies, you better be shopping for your dresses. or sports suits, whatever you want to wear. We have a few spots. Next week we have Chamber Businesswomen Luncheon. Diane McLaren, who is here, I saw her. There she is. She is going to be our speaker at that event. And so, Diane, make sure you wear green. Yep, she's on it. Let's see here. On behalf of the Board of Directors team, we wish to encourage all members to engage in the conversation with our local transit district chariots on their proposed 40 million, that's million with an M, per year wage tax exclusively on businesses in Salem and Kaiser. The Salem Chamber has partnered with 5 other local business advocacy organizations to seek common sense pathways to Chariot's funding goals. You will want to know about that. That is really important. We've got a task force coalition with Chariots, and they've got 2 meetings. We have 2 more meetings scheduled, and we're going to be tracking progress on all those conversations. Thank you, Dena Beyrouty, for being an awesome Spirit of Salem Award winner today. We appreciate everything that you do. Now, the flowers, right? Every time we've got the flowers. And those are provided by Roth's Fresh Market. Emily Rich, right, you are our winner today, gal. So do not forget to come up for that. That is all that I have for you today. Thank you for coming. Go forth and prosper.